empty town. We're searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air, like a blazing flare. Just stare, cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. I used to kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me. Shadows in the atmosphere, charting the stratosphere. Yeah. I prayed for you and kept you near, in hopes you'd chase away my fears. I'm on my own, you made it so, and now I'm chasing nightmares through. I used to run with you through the great big leaves, laugh at you when you laugh at me. Hope for us because I believe the home was just you and me. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. No point in blaming you, you did not know. Oh, I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me.
I have been muted for almost 10 minutes. Are you kidding me? I have read this entire page before I realized. I'm glad the button glows, but it should really glow brighter. Actually, here, no, I could set that to blink. Let me set that to blink. That might catch my eye a little bit better. But no, then I'm just going to get used to it blinking because it's always muted unless I'm actually using it. Tell you what, we'll just leave it how it is and kind of hope for the best. We're going to restart reading. Crap. I don't remember what I said. Okay, hold on. Go back to the start of the thing. Go back to the start. Go back to the start. Look, we're gonna have to go through all this again. They suck. It's just... I need to learn to, like, unmute. Hold on, let me make a note for myself on that. I know, I really should have a pre-stream checklist, because this happens often. Hold on, let me just do this. To-do list. Oh, okay, yeah, this is done. This is a useless text document. Can I just download a to-do list software? Hold on. Actually, I have one. I have a... No, I won't, like... Good software for checklist. Hold on, this might actually be helpful. These seem like the best, but what's the chances they have problems? Oh wait, can y'all see what I'm looking at? Hold up. I just realized, yes y'all can. I have no... Let's hope that's not a problem. We'll deal with that later. Hold on, let me just check to make sure I don't actually have an issue with this real quick. Hold up. I'm gonna watch this for a second to make sure I didn't do anything stupid. Okay, that whole interaction was stupid, but I think I'm safe, even though I accidentally showed my computer screen. So I think we're good. Have I reset my warnings? I have no idea what I have and have not done, because I forgot to unmute. Let me give this my drink. Okay. Let me think. Okay, I'm not sure what we've said, what we have not said, because I know I said the things I need to say, but I was muted, and now I don't know if I said them again. So we're going to start again from the top. Hello, welcome to the new stream. We're going to get a little spicy set. We're reading Geneva Convention. We're reading Geneva. Look, here's Geneva. Let me just scooch over here. Okay, and what else do I need to say? Oh yes, I am not a professional on this. I am an idiot on the internet. Take everything here with a grain of salt. Let me rephrase that. Don't treat me as a professional. Just because I say something does not mean it's true. Go out, do your own research, reach out to like professional lawyers or what have you, legal professionals, historians. I don't care, just not me. I'm not a professional. Make sure you get the right professional. That is very important. Let me think. I am looking at this through a educational, historical, and entertainment point of view. Hopefully I don't get punked off YouTube and Twitch. I should have applied the appropriate restrictions, hopefully. And I should be fine. Now with that said, let us reread this first page and then continue on with the rest of the thing. 15 minutes in, we're finally doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. Actually, I was already doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. I was on good pace, but then I screwed myself up because I don't have a pre-stream checklist. I should get I should probably download one to my phone. That would probably be better. Hold on, let me hold on, let me just go to like Play Store because I have an Android. Check list. This one seems good. Do I have space on my home screen for that? No, not really. I'll put it in I'll put it in a folder with the notes. I don't even need that. No. Where can I put it? Put it in the calendar. That seems to make sense to me. Hold up, I just need to do like one thing before I forget. My tongue hurts, I don't know why. There we go. Let me just install this as well, so I don't forget, because I've been meaning to do it for a while. Hopefully just, yep, that's good. Okay, we're good. Now that all that's out of the way, I'll set up those checklists later. There we go. Let us read. I'm gonna have to reread this page. Quick disclaimer. Separate from all the ones I've already done. I don't read good. Me no English good. So this is gonna be not great. So there's just a quick heads up. Hold on, let me just... Huh. Why is... That was weird. Okay, here we go. We should be good now. Y'all could hear me. OBS could hear me. My mic is unmuted. I'm good. Hopefully. Well, that answers that question. Okay. Now I just saw something on my chat app that answered a question I've been actually meaning to ask. Oh, yawning hurts so much. Okay, let us begin. The Geneva Conventions of 12 August 1949. Preliminary remarks. The International Committee of the Red Cross has, from the outset, been the sponsor of the Geneva Convention for the protection of wounded military personnel and of humanitarian conventions which supplement it. Each of these fundamental international agreements is... Oh, yawning hurts so much. What was I? Each of these fundamental international agreements is inspired by respect for human personality. Wait, what? Human personality and dignity. Together, they establish the principle of distributed aid to all victims of war without discrimination, to all those who, whether through wounds, capture, or shipwreck, are no longer enemies but merely suffering and defenseless human beings. Throughout the years, the International Committee has labored unregimentedly, that's probably not right, for the greater protection in international law of the individual against the hardships of war. It successfully elaborated the humanitarian conventions and adapted them to current needs, or instituted new ones. In the period between the two world wars, the committee's main achievement lay in the establishment of a number of draft conventions, chief among which was the Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War. This was signed in the summer of 1929, and during the last conflict protected millions of captives. Other new or revised draft conventions were to have been submitted to a diplomatic conference, which the Swiss Federal Council planned to convey in early 1940. Hostilities, unfortunately, intervened. I think that's intervened. In the year 1945 marked the close of a war waged on an unprecedented scale. The task to be faced of developing and adapting the humanitarian element. Oh, I can't curse. Oh. International law. Faced the development and adapting of the humanitarian elements of international law in the light of the experience gained. The International Committee's proposal met with the early approval of governments and national Red Cross societies. It immediately set to work. Three former conventions had to be revised. The Geneva Convention of 1929 for the relief on wounded and sick in armies in the field. The Exif Huge Convention of 1907 for the adaptation to maritime warfare of the principles of the Geneva Convention, and the 1929 Convention on the Treatment of Prisoners of War. Furthermore, there was an urgent need for a convention for the protection of civilians, the absence of which had, during the world conflict, led to such grievous consequences. The International Committee worked on the lines it had followed after... Oh, it hurts so bad. After the 1914 through 1918 war. First, it collected the fullest possible preliminary information on those aspects of international law that required confirmation, enlargement, or amendment. Then, with the help of experts from various countries, it prepared the revised and new drafts which were submitted first to an International Red Cross conference and then to a diplomatic a diplomatic conference empowered to give those treaties final that word. The first meeting of experts was held in October 1945 and comprised the neutral members of the Mixed Medical Commission, which during the conflict had visited wounded or sick prisoners of war to decide about their representation. The second meeting was the preliminary conference of the National Red Cross Societies for the study of the conventions and the various problems relative to the Red Cross, which the International Committee convened at Geneva in July and August 1946, and before which the first drafts were laid, having gathered the suggestions of Red Cross agencies on points which were within their particular fields. The committee made a close study during the months that followed and collected very full data on all matters dealt with in the proposed convention. Consolations included one in... Is that right? Yeah, I think that's consolations. In March 1947, with the representatives of the religious and secular bodies which had collaborated with the committee in giving spiritual and intellectual aid to the victims of war. From April 14 to 26, 1947, the Conference of Government Experts for the Study of Conventions for the Protection of War Victims was held in Geneva. This was attended by 70 representatives of 15 governments, which had held large numbers of prisoners and civilian internees during the war, and were therefore particularly experienced in the matters under discussion. Combing the committee's proposal, the suggestion made by the Red Cross societies, and drafts prepared by several governments, the conference agreed to the new text proposed and the first draft of a convention for the protection of civilian persons in time of war. The International Committee also sought the advice of several governments which were not represented at the April conference. Some sent experts to Geneva in June 1947. The drafts in preparation were also submitted by the committee to a special commission of the National Red Cross Societies, which met at Geneva in September of the same year. After careful editing early in the year, the draft conventions were sent by the committee in May 1938 to all governments and National Red Cross Societies in preparation for the... It wasn't EXIF, it was 10th. In preparation for the 17th International Red Cross Conference. That's right, yeah, okay. This conference set in Stockholm from August 20 to 31 from August 20 to 31, 1948. The representatives of 50 governments and 52 National Red Cross societies were present, with some amendments and drafts adopted. I need to take a sip of my drink. After passing through the many preparatory stages briefly described, these texts were eventually taken as the sole working document of the Diplomatic Conference of Geneva. Out of these grew the 1949 Geneva Conventions, the Diplomatic Conference for the Establishment of International Conventions for the Protection of Victims of War, convened by the Swiss Federal Council as trustee of the Geneva Conventions, was held in Geneva from April 20 to August 12, 1949. Of the 63 governments represented at the conference, 59 had sent hold on. I'm just gonna plenipotentiaries. That's a word. Hold on. This one's new to me. Dictionary. Plenipotentiaries. Dictionary.com has nothing. Plenipotentiaries. A person, especially a diplomat, invested with the full power of an independent action on behalf of their government, typically in a foreign country. Similar is diplomat, representative, ambassador, minister, emissary. Okay. That's a fun word. Let me hear it one more time. Plenipotentiary. That's a fun word. Had sent plenipotentiaries. 4 sent observers only. Representatives of the International Committee were invited to participate in the capacity of experts. After 4 months of continuous debate, the conference established the following 4 conventions, which are given below. Geneva Convention for the Hold on, I'm gonna Google again. Amelioration. Huh. All sorts of fun words this time. Geneva Convention for the Amelioration of the Conduct of the Wounded and Sick Armed Forces in the Field of August 12, 1949. Geneva Convention for the Amelioration of the Condition of Wounded, Sick, and Shipwrecked Members of Armed Forces at Sea of August 12, 1949. I should be reading the numbers. 3. Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war of 1912-1949. 4. Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilian persons in time of war, August 12, 1949. The conference at once divided into 4 committees. The first for the reason of conventions 1 and 2. The second for the reason of conventions 3, prisoners of war. The third to establish a new convention relative to the protection of civilian persons. And lastly, the joint committee to deal with the provisions common to the 4 conventions. Co-ordained and drafting committees met towards the end of the conference. What was I? Of the conference to harmonize the 4 texts. When necessary, the committees formed working parties. At the closing meeting, delegations from the following states signed the final act: Afghanistan, Albania, Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Bulgaria, Burma, Canada, Chile, China, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Ecuador, Egypt, Ethiopia, Finland, France, Greece, Guatemala? Question mark? I think that's right. Guatemala, the Holy See, Hungary, India, Iran, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Yugoslavia, Lebanon, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Mexico, Monaco, Netherlands, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Norway, Pakistan, Peru, Poland, Portugal, Romania, CM, Soviet Socialist Republic of Belarus, Socialist Republic of Ukraine, Spain, Sweden, Syria, Turkey, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, United Kingdom, United States of America, Uruguay, Switzerland. 17 declarations also signed the 4 conventions. 17 delegations, 17 delegations also signed the 4 conventions. 44 other states had signed when the agreed 6-month period expired on February 12, 1950. According to their provisions, the new Geneva Conventions came into force 6 months after the deposit of at least 2 instruments of ratification. Therefore, they come into force for each contracting party 6 months after its raffles. Don't think that's right. Provisions common to the 4 conventions. The Geneva Diplomatic Conference made an invitation and grouping together to amplify the common provisions up to then dispersed and rudimentary. Now practically identically in the 4 conventions, they may be considered under 3 headings. General provisions. The general provisions are given in a dozen articles of great importance at the beginning of each convention, laying down the mode of application. They dealt with the respect for the conventions and their application in international conflict, enemy occupation, or civil war. They were followed by provisions about the duration of applicable special agreements which contracting parties may conclude, the inability of the right of protected persons, the duties of protecting powers or their substitutes, the activities of the International Committee of the Red Cross, and the conciliation procedure between the contracting parties. Representation of breaches of the conventions. Articles 49 to 52 of the First Convention, 50 to 53 of the Second, 129 to 131 of the Third, and 146 to 149 of the Fourth. The Stockholm Conference had expressed the view that the provisions it had approved were still inadequate and had requested the International Committee to continue its study on this important question. After consulting lawyers of international repute, the committee prepared suggestions which appeared in the volume Remarks and Proposals submitted for consideration. The conference used these suggestions as a basis for its deliberations. The first articles impose The first of the articles imposes penal sanctions for breaches of the convention, in particular for grave breaches as defined in the succeeding article. These texts will doubtless be of important contribution towards defining war crimes in international law. The term is frequently used and seen in print, but still awaits an acceptable legal definition. I'm going to readjust. Final provisions. The final provisions appear at the end of each convention and defined the procedure for the signature, ratification, and entry to the force of the convention, and for accession to them. First Geneva Convention, Wounded and Sick. The traditional Geneva Convention, brought into being by the newly created International Committee of the Red Cross in 1864, is the source of the Geneva Conventions, which are now universally accepted. The original convention gave the impetus to the Red Cross movement throughout the world. It likewise inspired the impulse in the international law towards an increasing regulation and eventual restriction and final prohibition of war itself. The first international treaty, the fundamental principles of which remained unshaken, was nevertheless marked by... What was I? Oh no, I lost my spot. Where was I? Oh, here it is. Was nevertheless marked by omission and imperfections as early as 4 years after. What was I? Oh, I lost my spot again. As early as 4 years after signature, a conference was convened to discuss its revisions on October 20, 1868. The conference purposed a number of additional articles, providing in particular for the extension of the covenant to maritime warfare, but they were never ratified. A recommendation by the first Fugi conference, I think that's Fugi, in 1899 raised the question of revision again. The 1906 diplomatic conference established a revised text which recast the considerably development the 1864 text, which considerably developed the 1864 text. After the First World War, it was clear that the Geneva Conventions needed adapting to the conditions of modern warfare. During the 1929 diplomatic conference at Geneva, the text was one more revised through a lesser extent than on the first occasion in 1937. After renewed discussion by a commission of international experts called by the International Committee, another revised text was established. The draft, after some submission to the 16th International Red Cross Conference, London, 1938, was placed on the agenda of the diplomatic conference planned for 1940, but postponed by the Second World War. We have shown how the 1937 draft was shaped by the experience of 6 monstrous war years. Sorry, I had a cough. Hold on, I gotta figure out where it was. The help of the National Red Cross Societies, closely involved historically in the application and development of the convention, was particularly valuable. The text of the First Geneva Convention, as revived by the 1949 conference, follows traditional lines and fundamental principles that govern The governed former versions, wounded or sick, and therefore defenseless, combatants shall be respected and cared for, whatever their nationality. Personnel attending to them, the buildings in which they shelter, and the equipment used for their benefit shall be protected. A red cross on a white ground shall be an emblem of immunity, as will as well be seen later. The greatest divergences arise from the second conditions of modern warfare, which made it necessary to restrict the privileges of medical personnel and equipment in enemy hands. On the other hand, almost all articles have been made more precise. The general provisions are followed by Chapter 2, dealing with the wounded and sick. Article 13, drawn from the 1929 Prisoners of War Convention, enumerates the categories of persons, but persons put on the same footing as members of the armed forces, and hence entitled to protection under the convention, whereas the 1949 text demanded respect and protection only for the wounded. Article 12, which is new, gives a list of prohibited acts, attempts upon life, torture, willful abandonment, and so on. The information to be given about wounded captives and the duties to the dead have been defined. Article 16 and 17. A new provision, Article 18, guarantees to the inhabitants and to relief societies the right of assisting the wounded and sick. Chapter 3. Medical units and establishments has not undergone alteration except for the introduction of Article 23, creation of safety zones and localities. Chapter 4, medical personnel and chaplains has been greatly modified. Hitherto? Hold up. Let me just yoink this. I was right, it's hitherto. I just didn't know how to pronounce that. Hitherto, such personnel falling into enemy hands had to be immediately repatriated. The 1949 Convention provides that they may, in certain circumstances, be retained to care for prisoners of war. Their special status and the conditions for the special status and the conditions for the reparation of those not required, Article 30 to 32, have been carefully defined. Article 28, thus filling a serious gap. Chapter 5, medical equipment, has been substantially altered to take changes regarding personnel into account. Equipment need no longer be handed back to the belligerent to whom it belongs. In Chapter 6, similar provisions is made for transport vehicles. Article 35. It should be noted that medical aircraft are now authorized in certain circumstances to fly over neutral countries. Article 37. Chapter 7. Distinct emblem marks, no change in principle. Nevertheless, Article 44, the wording of which left so much to be desired in the 1929 text, it is now stated in logical and balanced terms, while the protective emblem is subject to strict safeguards and purely indoctrinatory emblem may be widely used by Red Cross societies. Chapter 8, application of the conventions calls for no comment. No comment reference has already been made to Chapter 9, representations of abuse and infractions, to the final provisions, Article 53, which is similar to the first convention, is intended to prevent abuse of the distinctive emblem. Second Geneva Convention, Maritime. The 1868 Diplomatic Conference at Geneva formulated the first provisions for the adaptation to maritime warfare of the principles of the Geneva Convention. This draft was not ratified, but later became the Huge Convention of 1899, and afterwards the 10th Hugh Convention of 1907, which was ratified by 47 states and still remains on force. Nevertheless, evolution in the methods of warfare and the fact that the first convention and the first Geneva Convention was revised in 1929 made a recasting of the 10th Hugh Convention essential. After preliminary study, the Internal Committee, with help of a conference of naval experts, drafted in 1937 a revised convention which placed the agenda on the diplomatic conference scheduled for 1940. This draft extended after 1945 in the light of war experience, was used as a basis for the diplomatic conference in 1949. The Maritime Convention, as it is called, is an extension of the first convention, Wounded and Sick, the terms of which still applies to maritime warfare. It is therefore natural that it should be included among the Geneva Conventions, out of which it originally developed. As a general plan of this second Geneva Convention covers the same field and protects the same category of persons as the first, no comment is necessary on its basic principles. It contains, however, no less than 63 articles, whereas the 1907 version had only 28. This is because the 1949 text, similar to the 1937 draft, adapts the provisions of the Land Convention and closely follows them. It has thus become a complete and independent convention, whereas the 1907 Huge text was chiefly concerned to adapt humanitarian provisions to naval warfare, following the general provisions common to the four conventions. Chapter 2 protects the shipwrecked. In addition to the wounded and sick, members of the merchant navy are protected under the terms of Article 13, insofar as they are not entitled to more favorable treatment under other provisions in international law. The qualification new in treaty law is conformity with ordinary practice. Chapter 3, obviously acceptable only to maritime warfare, deals with hospital ships and other relief craft. Chapter 4, at seas, medical personnel, on account of prevailing conditions, are given wider protection than on land. In particular, the medical personnel and crew, vital to hospital ships and such, may not be captured or retained. The personnel of other ships, while they may be in some cases retained, must be put ashore as soon as possible, and will then come under the first convention. Chapter 5, medical transports, has its parallel in the first convention, but the Maritime Convention makes no special provisions for the equipment, which is, in a sense, excuse me, And what was I? Which, in a sense, part and parcel of the vessel itself. There were no fighting aircraft in 1907, hence the addition in Chapter 6, distinctive emblem of provisions for more efficient marking of hospital ships is a safeguard against air attack. Chapters 7, evolution of the convection, and 8, representatives of abuses and infractions, as well as final provisions, call for no special comment. Third Geneva Convention, prisoners of war. The third convention contains 143 articles, besides the annexes. The corresponding 1929 convention had 97 articles. The chapter on prisoners of war and the Fugi Convention only 17. This extension is no doubt due in part to the fact that in modern warfare prisoners are held in very large numbers, but it also interprets the desire of the 1949 conference representing all nations to submit all aspects of captivity to humane regulations by international law. The aspiration is not new. The 19th century saw new concepts of natural law and the new humanitarian movement, in particular the ideas of Henry Dunant, who applied himself to the prisoner of war problem after the wounded and sick had been provided for. The civilized world finally accepted the principle that the prisoner of war is not a criminal, but merely an enemy, no longer able to bear arms, who should be liberated at the close of hostilities and be respected by the humanely treated while in captivity. Be respected and humanely treated while in captivity. Far-seeing and broad-minded legal and diplomatic actions has since translated concepts into practice through a series of compensations accepted as binding by states and successively extended or amplified when the experience showed them to be inadequate. The Brussels Draft of 1874, the huge conventions of 1899 and 1907, the special agreements made between Belgrance and Berne in 1917 and 1918, and the Geneva Conventions of 1929, which devote all or part of their clauses to prisoners of war, represent the principal stages of this evolution. Wherever it has applied, the 1929 Prisoners of War Convention effectively helped to protect the millions of men who relied upon it during the last conflict. Nevertheless, it was quite evident both to those who benefited and to those whom it applied that the conviction required revision on many points. There have been changes in methods and consequences of war, and even in the living condition of peoples. It was necessary to broaden the categories of persons entitled to prisoner of war status, so that such status is in fact granted to members of the forces which capitulate, and that prisoners may be arbitrarily deprived of it at any time. A more precise definition of conditions of captivity was also required, which would take into account the importance assumed by a prisoner of war labor, the relief they receive, and the judicial proceedings instituted against them. The principles of The principle of immediate liberation of prisoners on the close of hostility had to be reaffirmed. Finally, it was essential that the agencies appointed to look after prisoners' interests and ensure that regulations concerning them are applied in full should be as independent as possible of the political relations existing in between belligerents. These were the most urgent only of problems that were revealed, thus before hostilities had ceased, and the concurrent with the even more urgent task of preparing civilian conventions, the International Committee began work upon the revision of the 1929 Prisoners of War Convention. As already pointed out, the 1939 Convention is far larger than the agreement it replaces, but whilst many of its provisions represent a logical development of the 1929 Convention, experience has shown that the daily lives of prisoners may depend on the interpretation given to a general rule. It has been made, therefore, has been made to give certain regulations from explicit form, precluding the misinterpretation to which they were formerly open. Moreover, what was that? What was that? Hold up. I had like a notification pop up. Huh. What's that? I may be going crazy. Where was I? What was the last thing I said? Okay, I think I'm here. An attempt has been, therefore... My drink is empty. An attempt has therefore been made to give certain regulations an explicit form, precluding the misinterpretation to which they were formerly open. Moreover, principles which it was felt would have greater force for being tersely worded, e.g. Article 2 of the 1929 text, had been so seriously violated that the conference has recast them in terms comprehensive and clear enough to make any future infringement immediately apparent. Another group of provisions is designed to provide a satisfactory solution for the numerous problems outlined above. This task was more difficult in many instances. The conference had to devise entirely new regulations, as in the section dealing with the financial resources of prisoners of war, or deliberately to break with certain rules which in 1929 had been transferred more or less bodily from the Fugi regulations. One instance of the rule concerning the liberation of the prisoners at the close of hostilities. Some of the details may seem superficious repetition, and the lack of harmony between certain provisions may also cause surprise. It should, however, be remembered that whilst throughout concerned with the convention is an instrument of international throughout concerned with the convention as an instrument in international law, the conference had constantly in mind a special use to which it was to be put regulation and posted in prisoner of war camps and comprehensible not only to the authorities but the ordinary reader. Furthermore, the conference did not hesitate to sacrifice neatness in the interest of unambiguous agreement. These are reasons in which half the difficulty of establishing official legal texts simultaneously in two languages may account for, and even justify, most of the textual imperfections to be found in the Prisoners of War Convention. The table, which appears at the end of the volume, of the marginal notes to each article, make it easy to grasp the general plan, which as far as possible, similar to the 1929 convention. The general outline is as follows. Amongst the general provisions, Article 1 to 2, which have already been dealt with. Article 4, defining the categories of persons entitled to prisoner of war treatment, is a vital element of the convention. Part 2, general protections of prisoners of war. Article 12 to 16, contain the essential principles which shall, at all times and in all places, govern the treatment of prisoners. Part 3, Article 17 to 108, deals with the conditions of captivity and is divided into 6 sections. The first, Article 17 to 20, and covers events immediately after capture and deals with such matters as interrogation of prisoners, disposal of their personal effects, and their evacuation. The second, comprising 8 chapters, Articles 21 to 48, regulates living conditions for prisoners in a camp during transfer, and deals with the places and methods of interment, accommodation, food and clothing, hygiene, and medical attention. Medical and religious personnel retained for the care of prisoners. A new chapter which produces the provisions of the first convention. Religious needs, intellectual and physical activities, discipline, prisoners of war ranks, the transfer after arrival in a camp, prisoners' labor is dealt with in the third section, Article 49 to 57. The fourth section, Article 58 to 68, is new and concerns with financial resources of prisoners. The fifth section, Article 69 to 77, covers everything concerned with the correspondence of release shipments. The sixth and last section, Article 78 to 108, which is in 3 chapters, covers the relations between prisoners of war and the detaining authorities. Complaints regarding captive prisoners, representatives, and penal and disciplinary sanctions. This last chapter, Article 82 to 108, constitutes itself a brief code of penal and disciplinary procedure. The various measures for the treatment of captivity are contained in Part 4. In Part 4, Articles 109 to 121, which is divided into 3 sections. The first, Article 109 to 117, refers to the representation and accommodation of prisoners in neutral countries during hostilities. The second, Article 118 to and 119, to representation at the close of hostilities. And the third, Articles 120 and 121, to the death of prisoners of war. Part 5, Article 122 to 125, contains provisions about prisoners of war, information bureaus, and all organizations formed to assist prisoners. Part 6, Execution of the Convention, Articles 126 to 143, contains the first section, Article 126 to 132, a variety of the most important stipulations requiring belligerents inter alia to give national organizations free access to prisoners of war camps for inspection purposes, and to decimate the text of the convention as widely as possible. Articles 129 to 131 further contain the provisions common to the 4 conventions for the representation of breaches. 5 annexes are closely connected with the convention. Annex 1, Module Agreement concerning direct representation and accommodation in neutral countries of wounded and sick prisoners of war. Annex 3, Regulation. There's no 2? Regulations and concerning relative relief. And Annex 5, Module Regulations concerning payments sent by prisoners of their own country, are intended to substitute, in the absence of specific agreements on these questions between the belligerents concerned. Annex 2, there it is. Regulations concerning mixed medical commissions is prescriptive. Annex 4, purposes standard model documents such as identity or capture cards, correspondence cards, death notifications, etc. 4th Geneva Convention, civilians. The 4th... Okay, I keep going. The 4th Convention forms an important contribution to written international law in the humanitarian domain. Strictly speaking, this convention introduces nothing new in a field where the doctrine is significantly well established. It adds no specificity, new ideas to international law on this subject, but aims at ensuring that even in the midst of hostilities, the dignity of the human person, universally acknowledged in principle, shall be respected. The original humanitarian legislation, represented by the First Geneva Convention of 1864, provided only for combatants, as at that time it was considered evident that civilians would remain outside of hostilities. The regulations concerning the law of customs of war on land, annexed to the 4th Fugi Convention of 1907, made no provisions for civilians apart from spies. except where there was occupation of tyranny by enemy armed forces. They merely set forth a small number of elementary rules and pursuance of the principle that the occupant shall take all measures in his power to restore and, as far as possible, ensure public order and safety while respecting, unless absolutely prevented, the laws of enforce the country. Let's wait, hold on. And as far as possible, to ensure public order and safety while respecting, unless absolutely prevented, the laws enforced in the country, Article 43. Thus, family honor and rights, the lives of persons and private property, as well as religious conventions and practice, must be respected. Article 46. Pillage is formally forbidden. Article 47. No general penalty. No general penalty, pecuniary or otherwise, shall be inflicted upon the population on account of the acts of individuals for which they cannot be regarded as jointly and several responsibilities and severally responsible. Article 50, such as the main essential provisions. Now, what if we just call it a day here? I'm tired. I want to go to bed. I'll pick this up another day. We're on page 34. We've only gone through like 10 pages. And it's been an hour. We'll pick this up on some Wednesday when I'm not working and I could stay home. Or, actually, no. I get home early. I could do a couple hours. I'll try to squeeze this in. But I'm tired. And honestly, this is just going to need like many hours for me to sit down and read. And I'm enjoying this. I'm hoping y'all are as well. But I'm enjoying this. It doesn't look like anyone else is, though, because no one stopped by on YouTube. What about Twitch? Oh, yeah, we got someone on Twitch. Welcome. But, yeah. This is a very interesting read, and I would like to continue it. And I do hope to be able to continue it, but that time is not now. Because now it's just sleepy time. I am tired. I am very, very tired. And I wish to go to bed. So, Geneva, get out of here. Oop, wrong button. Can I get rid of Geneva? I'll finish you later, Geneva, okay? I'll see you then. To everyone watching, I would like to thank you for joining me today. I will pick this up eventually. I don't know when. Principia Mathematica might not be coming back because I can't read mathematical logic very well. I can like read it and understand it, sort of. I can't put that into words. So I'm just gonna have to read that on my own time. I believe that is all from me today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me, and I will see y'all later.